Hey guys, good morning. Thank you so much for joining the session. Let me share my screen real quick and let's discuss what is that we are going to do today. Okay, so with my screen being shared, let me come back to the GitHub link. This is my main repository. I'll just give you a few links. Keep that handy. This is the first link which I will give it to you right now. So this is the link. And this is the demo script of what we are going to discuss today. Okay, that's a second link I'm giving you. And this is a meetup group. A meetup group. Please, anyone who hasn't subscribed, they can subscribe so they will see events which are going to come. So today's event is we'll create a mini project using multiple technologies. We'll discuss about that. I just created a high-level architectural diagram. What is that we are going to build today? We'll come and we'll discuss with this. And one more link I would like to give is this YouTube channel. Keep this handy. So anytime I release a new video, that will get popped up here and you will get notified. Okay. And final point before we start is that this total event it's being done from the Microsoft Learn community, and these are coming from the learning rooms. So like there are multiple people who are part of this Microsoft community. Okay, so Microsoft community, and each of those people who are doing community service, they have been given a learning room. So this is my learning room. You can see that 583 people are there. You can also please join this, and here multiple like microservices and a lot of other things I'm discussing. If you come and see here, that is the next session is on microservices, then AZ204 lab, and a lot of other events I'm doing it, AWS, Azure, multi-cloud. So I think 2 minutes is already done for our introduction. Let's get going. So what is that we are going to do today? We are going to build a simple solution. And eventually this is going to be converted into a microservices solution. So every month we'll add new features. And today we are going to discuss these things. So what will be the solution? So there will be a Blazor application. And that Blazor application will invoke a Python Flask API. And that Python Flask API will go talk to Azure OpenAI and get some data, and then it stores it into the SQL server. And then there is a separate C#.NET 7 minimal API, and we'll test it with Postman. Eventually, this Postman will be replaced with, Postman will be there, we will not replace anything, but we'll be using an Angular 16 UI here, but at this point of time, it is like this. So it's a fictitious fictitious company or something which I created yesterday. The assumption is, suppose if I want to know what is the population of India and what is its capital state, what is its national bird, and like these kind of 4 or 5 fields. We are starting with that. Then we'll dig deeper into how many states are there, and see that what is the favorite food, or we'll see how the things goes. But eventually that's the thing. Like we are reusing OpenAI to help us build faster. So we are not going and searching a lot of places to get what is the country's capital and rest of the information. Okay, so that's what we are doing. So I'll quickly walk you through. So we have a SQL server where we have a database. At this point of time, I took only 4 fields, like country name, capital, national birth, and population, and a simple stored procedure to insert the row and return the ID which is generated. And this is how it looks. And here is a Python Flask API. So that will invoke the stored procedure, even though we are using the SQL Alchemy ORM. I kept 2 versions of the endpoints. One version is using the ORM, and one version is using the stored procedure, how to invoke the stored procedure. Like even if you use the EF core, we can directly interact with the DB set and get the data or insert the data, or, or we can call the stored procedure. Similarly, this ORM also, I did 2 versions of that and I kept it. So let's discuss about these files. Let me walk you through quick. And then how do we execute? We can execute multiple ways, like Flask app run or Flask run. We'll see that in a minute. And Python, this way also we can run. I've shown both the ways here. There's a third way, we'll do it now. And how do we test that? We can use our Postman tool to test. It will give this information. And then we will integrate the Python Flask API, which we created with the Blazor server. And we'll see the Blazor server is this one. It talks and we can insert the data. We'll delete all the data before we start. And that's the insertion. And then we'll retrieve the country's information from the minimal API. So that's what we are going to see that. So if you come and now you can correlate all the pieces in this architectural diagram. So we have the stable and stored procedure here. And we wrote a Python API and tested with the Postman. And this Python API is talking to Azure OpenAI. And then whatever the content it receives, it drops it inside the SQL server. So then we started integrating the Blazor server app with Python API, Python Flask API. So this is like an 1, 2, 3, 4, these 4 steps. And whatever this is like an admin application. Assume that ours is a tourism company. So admin decides that we support tourism in country A, country B, country C. So the insertion will happen only from this admin application. Like this is minimal API is another service which supports the customer application. So the customer application and other enhancements, we will do it in the next episode or next session. So the plan is like admin says that, okay, I want to support tourism to UAE, US, France, and England. So those 4 rows will be there. So this minimal API will display all the 4 rows, and eventually we will add a client application Angular 16 to retrieve the information and show there. And once that is done, we will do a click on that one of the row, which goes and brings in all the states. So we will, from here also, we can go and get the data, or the moment we add it here, we'll ask that to go and get the states also and store it here, or this we will maintain our own copy of the database, maybe the Cosmos DB or MongoDB or Postgres. At this point of time, I'm not sure. We'll do something, but we will enhance this. So eventually, each one of these pieces will have its own repository, CI/CD pipeline, and all these things. But this is the first step towards the big solution, like Microsoft microservices solution. So this is the first step. Okay. So let me see. Let me open the Blazor server application also. Just give me 1 minute. This is the minimal API one. And this is the country's info admin. This is the Blazor API. Okay, let's see that do we have all the moving pieces, and then we will start with that. Let me flash this architectural diagram. So we have SQL Server, so it's open in Azure AD. We have Blazor Server, it is there here, and we have minimal API that is in here, and we do have the this minimal, sorry, the Python Flask, it is here. So all the moving pieces are here. So let's start discussing about these step by step. And I have to display a couple of slides. So I'm still a learner, so apologize if I do any mistake. And this is my main GitHub repository where you will find all the samples, all the for loops which I write every day. So it will be here. So that being said, jokes apart, I will come back to serious mode. And this is the first time I wrote uh, a web API in Flask. Okay, so I browsed Google and stuck with something and uh, did it, but that's the first time. It might be the worst organization or good or bad, I'm not sure, but that's what I did it. So let's break the ice. Let me start uh, connecting to the SQL Server. So we'll go step by step. We are connecting to the SQL Server. So we'll see those two pieces. I kept it here so that it will be easy for us to go step by step. So there are a couple of things which I have kept it. Let me use that. Come back to this database. And this is where I have the tables and the stored procedure. Let me create a new query. I paste it here. And database is already selected. We can see that if I run that, already there are a lot of like India, Peru, US, and some of the places I tried it. So I will remove that. So this is from the SQL Azure folks. You can see that database Windows.net. So right now we don't have anything in the database. Okay. So if I execute this minimal API, so we should not get anything. So let's see that. And we'll be sure that this is happening from the database, SQL Azure. Let's give it a minute and let me try this out. And so because this is the first hit, you can see that it went and hit the SQL Server, Azure SQL Server, and there are no rows, which is exactly matching with the database state. So right now we don't have anything here. That's good. So I'll keep it as it is. So let's see the table. I created a countries info table. So this countries info has got the same set of fields which we have seen earlier. Let's come back and tally each one of those. Like it has 4 fields technically, and the 5th field is just an ID. Eventually, I might change that into GUID, but at this point of time, I'm keeping um, like I thought of to do some mini project instead of again doing prompt engineering, the same thing again and again. So this is what I thought. Okay, anyways, here also we are able to see that 5 fields. And let's quickly see the stored procedure. I'll close this and under programmability, stored procedure. So this is the stored procedure. So we'll see that stored procedure. It's taking some time. Let's not waste in that opening it. So I'm sorry. Let's come back to that one. So we have seen the table and stored procedure. Here is the stored procedure. It has come. I don't know why the table was making some trouble, but at least we can see from the columns. So we see that country ID, name, state, national bird, and country population. So we see this, all the information is available. Okay, that's our first moving piece. So in the architectural diagram, God, have opened a lot of windows. So in the architectural diagram, we discussed about the SQL server, and it has got a database, one table, and one stored procedure. Okay, the table which we are interested is the countries info table and its respective stored procedure, SQL server and database table stored procedure. That's it. So now come back to the Azure. This is a website, but eventually I have already deployed it. This one piece I've deployed, but this is in Azure and this is also in Azure. I'll show you at the last, but these two pieces I'll move, and again, I'll see how I can move the Angular also, so that all these microservices, individual pieces will be in cloud itself, like deployed in cloud. So let's see about this Python. So I never worked in Python, to be frank. So what did I do to do this is, first thing is I will come back here and I'll do code dot. I want to show you the approach which I took. It took 3 days time to do this one. So the first thing is I did a very, very small experiment uh, on this one, and I called it as a data uploader. I didn't know what to do that, but I called it as a data uploader. So it has got a class object, and I wrote this one. I mean, I wrote in the sense I took help. Uh, Google is there, ChatGPT is there. So those people, I mean, we did a pair programming. It's not only me. So just initially thought of to see that how I can write data into the SQL stored procedure. So using this PyODC. So this was the first step. So the stored procedure is here, and assuming that I have got the country information, I'll just drop this and execute it. So that was my first step. This is a hard-coded one. The first step is to try how to insert the data from Python to SQL. That was the first experiment I did. And then what did I do is, the second experiment was to integrate that with this Azure OpenAI. In this case, you see this, the data is hard coded, the JSON is hard coded. So the next step, what did I do is I wrote the same piece, but this time integrating with the Azure OpenAI also. So it's again the part of the prompt engineering. So while doing the prompt engineering, what happened is multiple times for different reasons it was failing. So again, the prompt engineering will come into the picture here. So we are integrating Python, Azure OpenAI, and SQL. So the prompt is very, very important. So I'll give you a country name. So I'm asking it to please give me the country name, state capital, national bird, country population for country. That's parameterized. So whatever the country we get it as to this piece will inject as part of the prompt. And I told like as a flat JSON, because I remember one particular scenario where I gave South Africa, it was giving the proper information. But when I gave only Africa, so what happened is it gave Africa at the top, and then it created an object, and inside that country name equal to South Africa, and it gave some other information. So at that time, what is happening is the contract it was giving different. That's because I didn't ask exactly what do I want. So then I said that give it in flat JSON. So then that problem got fixed. And the next problem what I was facing is, for some countries, the population it was giving as a big int. For some countries, the population it was giving it with comma separated in double quotes. For some countries, it was giving population with the literal numeric literal underscore, like 3 digits underscore 3 digits underscore. So different formats it was failing. So I told that without separators. So these were the two issues I faced it. And then again, our prompt engineering will come into play. So this was my second step. And after that, the third step was to create it with the Flask API. Okay, so let's discuss about that before we see that getting executed. So I'll close this. I already opened a lot of windows. So let's spend 1 minute time to see the organization. We saw the first piece, and I'm using this ORM. So as I was mentioning, I kept 2 versions. So if anyone wants to use directly ORM to insert the data, they can use that. Or if they want to call the stored procedure, they can use that. So I kept both versions. So let's discuss what is there in this one. API routes by. So this has got, let's see step by step. Here, API routes by. So if you can see this, all the routes has been defined in here. Okay, and we are using this blueprint. So blueprint, if you see that, that's one of the way to organize this routes. So this blueprint, I am correlating with this endpoints. You can see that in the endpoints, you see this I routes where we are grouping all these things routes. So I'm correlating C# with other. Basically, I'm from C# and .NET world. Now learning few other things. So I can correlate the same thing, API routes blueprint, and you can see that the blueprint is pretty, I'm thinking it's pretty similar to the route builder where we group all these routes. So here also we are grouping these routes. This is the route and this is the country info. I should have done a better job because tomorrow we might get states and that routes will go in separate file and it should have a separate grouping with prefix. So I'll do that little later. But in this session, this is what I was able to complete it. So using this blueprint, we are giving 2 routes. This is the parent route. When it comes to this, it just displays this message. And here you can see this countries info. And that's the post method. So we'll come back and we'll discuss about that. So this one is technically using the stored procedure. And I just renamed the old one to V1, which is using the ORM to save. You can see this countries info DTO. If I come to this models, inside this models, this countries info DTO is there and we have the table name and it is saving here. So I kept that route also where you are directly using the ORM to do the job. So our focus is this one. So let's come back over here. So this is the first file. And the second file is models. Just now we have seen that. The third one is db_config file. So this has got the ORM configuration. So that's under utils. And we are creating this Flask SQL alchemy, and we are creating the DB there. And the next thing is env config, because all these things are inside this env file. I just created a example env. These are the things. You should have your connection string and track modifications is false, your model deployment name, your URL, API version, and your key. So I'm just not clicking on that one. Once I did it in my previous session, I clicked it. So we are reading the env values and we are returning whatever the key anyone wants. So those 6 keys you need to have. I've given this example env, and error handling is being in separate file, and the Azure OpenAI integration is in separate file. So you can see that we are getting a prompt and we are using the Azure OpenAI. So that's being done over here. And just we are passing this information, the prompt, to the Azure OpenAI, and it is retrieving the content. And whatever the content which is coming in, it's in a JSON string, assuming that it's coming in a JSON string. Because if it's failing, that means we need to come and fix our prompt, which is in line number 14. And then JSON load country information. So that will be the JSON object and which we are returning. So this is the logging piece. So all the logs will be stored here in this logs file. Okay. So that being said, the key piece, the pretty key piece is the app.py. Okay. So in this, we are importing few of these items and you need to create a Flask name. So what happened is the app Flask I created in line number 15. So almost yesterday, I spent 6 hours to deploy this Flask API, almost 6 hours. And I didn't know, then I started looking into Stack Overflow and ChatGPT, left, right, and center, moving between them. And at last I understood that it was throwing me an error saying that it's not able to find this. So I had to move this from line 15 to top. Now this becomes a global object or object at a class level, at a file level or class level. I'm talking in terms of C#. Apologize for my less knowledge on Python. Then what did I do is other issue what I faced was it was not recognizing the routes. So when I created a route in the app file, only this route was recognized. That means when I came here to that Azure websites, when I click on that, so only the root endpoint was recognized. Rest of the endpoints were not recognized. So I thought that what is that mistake? Then I was thinking that, oh, maybe all the routes have to declare here in app.py. That doesn't make sense because we are organizing code in folders and in a good organization in a modular way, but still why it was not able to access. It's in cold mode. It's a free version of the website. So it will be slow. We'll see that. Is it there or I deleted? I'm not sure. Let's see that. So that's the first thing I faced it. So when I was hitting this, this was coming in and the routes which I declared within the separate file and that to organize it with the blueprint, these routes was not hitting. So again, 2 to 3 hours of chase. And then at last, ChatGPT gave me a clue saying that we need to do a URL prefix. So then I added a URL prefix and API. Then I executed and it was not working again. Then I thought that what is this? Then I figured it out. So at that point of time, the route was API. Here also /API/country info. Then I did that Azure website /API/API. Then it was a first hit. Then I understood. Okay, here itself I should have done that piece like URL prefix /API/countries /API/states. Like that, if I organize it, because I can't have all the endpoints in the same file. So this is the first cut. So this is okay. Now I need to call this as country routes blueprint, state routes blueprint, something like that. Then the URL prefix should also be different. Okay, so see this. This was working, and the moment I come here and I was hitting, this was not working. This is the second route which we have it here. So that troubled me. So the catch here is the app should be at the top level. That's what I figured it out. And the second one is URL prefix. So a lot of people, other people who are working day in and day out in Python, they gave this solution. Thanks to all of them. And another thing is when we are running the Python Flask in dev mode, so we can use this one. So when you're deploying, we have to create this app and run without any parameters. This should be the production. So whatever the deployment I did, I commented these two lines and uncommented this. There might be better option. I'll figure it out. But at the same time, this startup the startup.file has to be there. I mean, the deployment thing we will worry in the next session, but at least we'll see how it works. So as of now, we know that there are no rows inside this. So let's come back. How do we execute this? So the first thing what we have to do is we have to activate the virtual environment. Okay, that's the first thing we have to do. And I will go to the folder where I have all these files. So to see that, I have all these files here. You can see that. And the next thing is pip list. So these are the list of libraries, packages, which have installed. So that is also given here in this requirements. You can see that the requirements.txt. You can do pip install this one, so it will install. So you see this one, pip install. These are the packages I installed. Then I did pip install freeze in the requirements. In future, if you bring this code and you have to create a Python environment and activate it, and you want to come out of the Python environment, all we need to do is deactivate. You're out of that. Okay. So let's again do this one more time. We'll activate it and cd a5. That's the one. And we know other commands are here. You need to create an environment and activate it. There'll be a little bit difference based on the operating system. So if you see this one, if you go into the scripts, you will see batch file, you will see PowerShell, and you will see sh, I think so. I think this is a shell script. So you will see all these three versions for activate and to deactivate. It's just a batch file. I think it should be, but here you see this, you have a batch file, you have, this is sh, I assume, if I'm not wrong. Let's open and see this. That should be the shell command, right? Yeah, this is the shell. That's a shell command. So your batch, ps and shell. So I'll leave it there. And now we are back. We can do multiple ways, as I was mentioning. Python and app.py. So we can do that using Python. So we can execute, this is the first way. And second way is we can execute using Python run. This is the second way. And the third way is Flask -f1 app run. So there are multiple ways we can execute. So one is python.app and Flask run, because all the things we have already configured, and Flask -app run. So we are telling that what is the main application where it has to boot. So let's use Flask run, simple Flask run without any parameters. Executed. Now let's come back to this one and see there are nothing in our Azure SQL database. So I'll keep the Postman ready. Let me close all the tabs, and first let me go to the local. When I hit that, it should hit the first endpoint. When I come to the second one, it should hit the it should hit the second endpoint. Oh, did I spoil the code? Wow. It's, I was just doing some last minute changes. Okay. So let me come back over here. What is that? It's 5,000. Right. And ooh, 1 second. I did last minute changes. URL prefix and the route. Sometimes, shouldn't have done the last moment changes. Same one. Just give me 1 minute. I did this last moment change. I did the change to this one. Development. Create Flask. Wait. What is that? Okay. Try this. Okay, we're back. So this is the first endpoint, which is there in the parent one. And the second endpoint is this one, which is coming in from the API routes. This is the top one, API routes. Welcome to Python Flask Web API. But this one says that welcome to Python Flask API. And the one which says that Web API is coming in from the blueprint. And now we don't have any rows here in this. What I will do is first thing I will add India. I click on this information. Let's come back. It takes a little bit time, not that much. You can see it said 201. That means it created. And we can come and see that capital state New Delhi, country ID 17, India, and this one national bird. So let's come back and check this. You see, when we clicked it twice, you see that here. So the next thing, what I will do is I will go and add USA. Again, I click on yes. And Okay. So, oh, it's sitting twice. It's sitting twice. I'll look into that, why it is sitting twice. And the next thing is we will use UAE. And I mean, I didn't do much of the error validation, except that assuming that we are giving a proper information. Okay, now that we tested basic thing is working, then I will come back to this one. So we saw the first piece SQL, we saw the second piece Python Flask Web API, and I also showed you where all the places where I was facing problem. And the next thing is we will use France using the live one which has been hosted. So this is the Azure websites. Here you can see that. So if I use France, I click on France. So it inserted France. So because all are connected to the same. So France is being inserted in that here. So that's cool. So the data is being inserted from local as well as from the Flask, Python Flask API, which is hosted in the Azure. So all is well, it's working. So now next thing is what I will do is I will go ahead and delete few rows. Let it be. I mean, we'll see one integration with this Blazor server. So like admin are the people who will decide whether they have to support a particular country for the tourism, isn't it? So suppose there are no local guides and they don't have collaboration in that country. So they say that, oh, okay, we don't support the tourism. It's just a simple Blazor. And this is also going to be enhanced because all the CRUD operations for that country should happen from the admin application. So the customer application is the Angular 16, which I'll be creating next. There, they will be only, they should be able to see that what countries this tourism supports. So when we come here, the country information, as of now, it's only one field. France is there. Peru is the one which is not there, I assume. If I come in and execute, Peru is not there. So I use Peru and I just click on, I mean, I'll add spinner and other things little later. So it takes some time and Peru information has been successfully added. So I come and click on that. So you can see that the Peru is also added. So England is one more thing. Let's add one more time. Come back to this page and England. So sitting the Azure OpenAI, as I was showing here in the Python. So when we hit the post method, so it does an integration get country information. So when you go to this get country information, that's coming in from this class, which is talking to Azure OpenAI. So this is the package. So Azure OpenAI, based on the prompt we are getting and sending that JSON object. So England information should also be added here. Okay, so let's delete few rows. Ugly there, and the ID in. I'll remove 17, 19, 21, and 23, 25, and 27. Those 5 rows, remove it. Now at least we have 6 countries. That's cool. So that's our from the integration perspective, let's again see the architectural diagram. So we were able to integrate Azure OpenAI inside the Python Flask, get the country information, store it in the SQL database. And that we tested with the Postman first and verified the database that rows exist. And then we created the Blazor server application and integrated with that. So few of the tips in terms of this Blazor server application. I mean, I just changed the default menu color here in the main layout. I removed this image. There will be a sidebar. I removed that gradient color and I used this color. Suppose if I want to use maroon, let's see that. I'm very bad in choosing the colors. That's one tip. So where you want to have a 2 shades, a plain color, we can use this. Let's see this. There you go. So what happens? Everything it takes care, because the only thing is you need to give the color, and based on that color, this populates the maroon, and this will be plus of this color. So it will be a little bit more darker. So that's one tip. And another tip is, I'll close this all. I'm not saving anything. Why is that? Undo the changes. Let me come back to the blue color. And another thing here is, this is the data transfer object. I'm using record instead of class because immutable. Once the record is getting populated, I'm not changing it. From the creation perspective, whatever the data which has been populated in the field, I'm just transferring it and sending it across. And another thing is a little bit of logs, and this is the countries API. I'm creating the named client. So inside this, you can see I'm creating the named client, and the key thing here in the pages, you can see you can correlate this with the Angular page, if you see that. So this you can correlate with the TypeScript TS file, and this you can correlate with the HTML file, and this you can correlate with the CSS or SAS file. So even though you work in Blazor server or Blazor version, you have full flexibility to have a separation of concern where you can write the markup in Razor pages, and the Razor page dot CS is like a TS file where you can write the code behind logic, and you have the full flexibility to have your own independent customized CSS. So that is this piece. So that is from the separation of concern perspective. And another important tip which I would like to give you is, here we are using the HTTP client factory, and that we are saying that inject. So that will get injected. And there's all general logic. I'm calling the client.postAsync. It's posting this to the Python Flask. So if you come and see here, that's the Python Flask API. Okay, so we saw 3 pieces, 3 moving pieces. So let's again quickly check those 3 pieces. So we checked about 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now the next thing is minimal API. So this is the minimal API, and this I created with the layered architecture, and also you can see different layers. I mean, the entire logic is being divided into different layers. So we'll see step by step. So this is a data project where I just used entity. Eventually, it's going to have entity and DTO object, DTO models. And the DB context, you can see that we have DB context and the DB set, nothing else here, because we are not doing the code first approach, because we know that the Python is inserting the content. So at this point of time, two services are using the same database. So eventually, this is going to have its own database. So the moment the record has been inserted here, we'll recreate that into separate database. So this is the customer database. It's like a read-only database. This is the transactional database where admin will decide that what are the countries which he wants to support the tourism. So in the next episode, at least this will be the first change where we will move this to a separate database. I don't know what I'm going to move to MongoDB or another copy of the SQL Server, or it could be Cosmos DB. I'm just keeping all the options open. I'll see what best I can do. So there will be some other enhancements here and there, and that is the second version. And then we will have Angular 16 application. And suppose we are trying to, we want one information which is not available, then we will request that information. So again, that message should go back to admin. How I will see how to do that. But net, if you see that in next couple of months, few months, this will be a microservice with each individual repository having their own CI/CD pipeline. This will grow bigger and bigger. Let's take time, but we will do that. So the second thing is that, and here in application core, I have this constants, and this constants file has got the routes here and two interfaces. One is for business logic, one is for repository. So repository is using the DB context to get the content and then convert that into iRead-only collection. And the key things here from the minimal API perspective, let me close all these things so we can focus on that one piece. So if I see here, that's all which is there in the program.cs. So in the program.cs, I divide, or I'll see that from two different things. One is the generation of service collection, and one is configuring the HTTP pipeline. Okay, so loading all the application dependent service, I just created two extension methods. And inside the extension methods, I'm adding the DB context, I'm adding the business logic, I'm adding the repository, I'm adding the API Swagger. And from the configuring HTTP pipeline perspective, we are adding Swagger, the HTTPS redirection, the welcome endpoint, and the countries endpoint. And those are here. The welcome endpoint is someone, if someone reaches the route, the main route of this, they'll see this welcome message, this greeting. Either way, I just wanted to display the same thing. Our business logic as of now is to return countries. So we use this map group, iEndpoint route builders map group, and we're prefixing it. And this guy is returning, is calling the business logic and is returning. And you see this from services. Even though we don't write it, nothing happens. But as a good citizens, we will write it. We'll still enhance this further. Let's see this in action. We'll see the Swagger. And if you come and see the Swagger UI, if I come to this endpoint, I can do a try it. I should be able to get that. And our main endpoint, the countries endpoint, if I come and execute this, we'll see. So we can see that the countries, all the 6 countries are coming in. So this is the endpoint. So I can come back to get countries. This is the 7239. Let's verify 7239. That's the endpoint. If I come and click on this one, you can see that it's returning the same 6 objects which we had it. And you can see that there's a lot of logs being spit over here, which exactly says that what was the endpoint we clicked on it, and it reached the business logic layer. And from business logic layer, it went to the repository layer. And from repository layer, it went into the EF core database. And we can see that select C.country ID, C.capital, all the data which we want to return. And then object result 200 is being written. And then we are converting that list JSON and endpoint middleware routing, and we are spitting the content out. So net, you can see that how many milliseconds it took. So if I hit it now, it took around 500 milliseconds. So it might improve plus or minus. The thing is that the database which I provisioned is in East US, and I'm sitting in Hyderabad. So definitely there will be a latency from here till here. Okay, so that is the another moving piece. We have seen this testing, then we have seen the Blazor project structure, and then how we were able to integrate this. We have seen that, and retrieve the country's information that we have seen. The key thing was the extension methods and endpoints has been moved. Now, if you see the program.class is less than 20 lines, so all small files, we organized it and we were able to test it. So this is what we discussed in this. So what is next? So the next is we will be enhancing this piece. Again, we'll be using the Azure OpenAI. And what I'll do, what is the plan is to have, this is a separate microservice technically. So it should have its own database. So the moment someone drops the message here or a record here, it should create some of the fields. Like this should have more number of fields, like who created, when it was created, who modified, when it was modified. All those auditing fields will be there. So that structure, I'll change it. And the moment you drop the record here, it should create a copy of this, and then is supported true or false will the tourism, that is the tourism perspective, not from the OpenAI perspective. Azure OpenAI gives this country information based on its model and the data on which it was trained. It gives that. So that's one thing. And then we'll have a Angular 16 app to do a client. And at this point of time, I was mentioning only 1 and 2, these 2 pieces, and this 3 also. Azure OpenAI is technically is in Azure. And there's a SQL Azure, it's in Azure, and I was able to deploy this, but we didn't discuss anything on that. And all the problems I faced, I told. Next, I'll deploy the Blazor server, this one, and a new database, and Angular, everything in cloud, and few enhancements here and there. That will be the step 2. So thank you so much for joining. Hope this session was informative and you were able to learn something new. And see you guys in the next session. Bye. Have a good rest of the day.